Probably the most instantly recognizable building in downtown O'Fallon is the old bank building at 101 West State Street with the iconic clock on the side. Construction began in August 1903 by the newly formed First National Bank of O'Fallon, which was located in temporary quarters in the Smiley Drug Store across the street to the east. Bank president Ernest Smiley, also a pharmacist, owned the drugstore and was embarking on a change of careers, pharmacist to banker. On the bank site, there were two old buildings that, at the time, were occupied by the post office and Julius Shelter's barber shop. They were side by side, facing South Lincoln. The bank bought the lots and the buildings from Anne Beaumont. The plan was to build a two-story brick building on the corner for the bank, with a one-story extension on the west side for the temporarily displaced post office and barber shop. The second floor would house the Smiley Brothers telephone exchange, which was in the drugstore. Bank President Ernest and his brother Charles were the Smiley Brothers. Other rooms up there would be rented out to small businesses and professionals. By May 1904, the bank was in its new building, which was still not quite finished. There isn't a cornerstone, but in the basement, a worker, Ellis Moore, left his mark behind along with the date, September 30th, 1904. There had been a bank in downtown prior to this, in a building no longer standing, across the street, the northeast corner of State and Lincoln, now a parking lot. Called the O'Fallon Bank, it was a branch of the Lebanon Bank owned by Henry Sider. It failed disastrously in 1894, leaving O'Fallonites with a bad taste in their mouth for banks. But in 1903, outsiders from Flat River, Missouri came to town with the intent of starting their own bank. They built a one-story brick building at the southeast corner of First and Cherry to house it, which is now the first floor of the P.O. Pizza building. The second floor was added later. In the meantime, likely a reaction to the outsiders' effort, the First National Bank, with its federal charter, was winning the race to open first. The Missourians pulled up their stakes and left town, selling the building they just built. O'Fallon wasn't quite ready to support two banks. Memories of the previous bank failure still fresh, the First National Bank emphasized safe and sound banking practices. Accordingly, Smiley brought on board William R. Doris as cashier. A longtime educator, he was superintendent of O'Fallon schools and founder of O'Fallon High School. Like Smiley, he would also be changing careers, education to banking. Vice presidents were George W. Tiedemann, president of the Tiedemann Milling Company, and physician Dr. Herman T. Bechtold, who lived in the newly built mansion that's now Chilton Lake Funeral Home. In June 1921, the First State Bank was chartered and located in the same building the Flat River men built for the bank that never happened in 1903. The cashier for this new bank was Thomas T. Gordon, who was, until 1918, assistant cashier at First National. But First National, its interior pictured in this photo, wasn't going to stand still. Coincidentally, or maybe not, by March the next year, 1922, First National was having architects draw up plans for a complete remodeling of the bank building. Both the interior and exterior. The bank would be enlarged by about 1/3, extending to the west. An entirely new facade would be created, along with a new extension to house John Schneider's jewelry shop, taking the place of the post office, which would move to East First Street, and Shelter's barber shop. The telephone exchange would still be upstairs, along with office space available for rent. The crowning glory, however, was the addition of a 10-foot tall four-sided clock manufactured by O.B. McClintock of Minneapolis. Boasting stained glass clock faces and chimes ringing out on the quarter hour, it instantly became a downtown landmark. The First National Bank thrived at its location in the center of town. Besides the bank on the first floor, a variety of businesses occupied the second floor. The phone exchange in the northeast section was a constant until it moved out in 1952. Over the years, there were doctors, dentists, construction offices, beauty shops, chiropractors, lawyers, insurance agents, and more. Besides the jewelry store and barber shop, the West Addition later housed such businesses as Common Auto Supply, Mose Eckert Insurance Agency, Home Air Vacuum Cleaners, Bertram Insurance Agency, Worma Witter Insurance Agency, and Forensic Science Laboratory. The most beloved of the second-floor tenants was the Women's Club Public Library, better known today as the O'Fallon Public Library. The library had its beginning in the northwest corner room and was housed there from 1930 to 1945, when it moved to East First Street. But not for long. Wanting a more modern, spacious building, the First National Bank built a new home at the southeast corner of 2nd and Lincoln in 1960. The bank offered to lease the old bank building to the city to be used as a library. The city agreed, and after extensive interior remodeling, the library held an open house in their new first-floor home on February 1, 1962. In 1972, the bank deeded the building to the city outright. In 1983, a children's wing was added in the one-story West Addition. The second floor would be utilized for city offices. Countless children and adults passed through the doors during the building's life as a library until a new one was built in 1995. When the library moved out, the first floor became vacant, but only for a while. Needing a home for its growing collection of O'Fallon artifacts, the city agreed to allow the O'Fallon Historical Society to operate a museum out of the building. The museum opened in 1996. At the same time, Main Street O'Fallon used the West one-story addition for their offices. Eventually, the museum would come to occupy the entire building, including the extension. The old bank building has some interesting features connected with it. Projecting from the northeast corner of the roof is what looks like a flagpole. In fact, it used to be a light pole with a heavy sheath surrounding it. In the days before O'Fallon had a police dispatching system, the light was used something like the bat signal from the Batman comics. When someone made an emergency call to the operator on the second floor, she flipped a switch which activated the light. That was the signal for the city marshal or night watchman on duty to call the phone exchange for details. The bank roof was also the first home of the fire department siren before the Washington Street Firehouse was built in 1954. In the basement of the building, a vault door installed during the 1922 remodeling still exists. It leads to a walk-in bank vault with shelves. During the time the building was used as a library and before O'Fallon had a standalone police department building, the vault was used to store police evidence. The vault was really a double-decker. The main vault on the first floor sat on top of the basement one. In 1949, the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey installed a benchmark elevation marker on the side of the building, designating that spot as being 554.415 feet above sea level. A fun O'Fallon fact to impress your friends with. Another interesting feature is in the southeast corner of the building. Built to conform to the lot, the corner isn't a right angle, especially noticeable in the upstairs rooms, an unusual oddity in downtown. Then, of course, there's the iconic clock on the side of the building. Since its installation in 1922, it has undergone two major restorations, in 1974 and 2014. And in 2017, it was moved higher on the building to prevent trucks or other tall vehicles or equipment from hitting and damaging it. The clock, along with the caboose on First Street, have become, over the years, the unofficial symbols of downtown. With its stately presence, the old bank building at State and Lincoln remains an imposing fixture in O'Fallon's downtown district. Its historical importance to O'Fallon was recognized by the St. Clair County Historical Society when it was designated a county historic site in 2008. Today, as a museum of the O'Fallon Historical Society, the building houses the treasures of O'Fallon's past in its various rooms, as well as provides a place to explore that history through the story of the building itself and the O'Fallon community surrounding it.